size of this thing.
To the aces of the Luftwaffe, men who believed themselves the undisputed masters of Europe's skies, the arrival of a new American fighter in the spring of 1943 seemed like the punchline to a cosmic joke. It was swollen, misshapen, and enormous. A flying milk bottle, they sneered. Milchflasche, a fat American brute lacking elegance, finesse, or grace. It weighed almost twice as much as their lethal Focke-Wulf 190s, and its silhouette lumbered through the clouds like some barnyard animal that had accidentally taken flight. German pilots laughed. They expected an easy kill. Instead, they were watching the birth of a monster. In the crucible of early 1943, the war in the air resembled a chess duel played with knives. Fast, lethal, unforgiving. The Luftwaffe entered that year still filled with hardened aces, many of them veterans since Poland and France, while the Americans were newcomers, eager but untested. Into this arena came the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, designed by an immigrant genius named Alexander Kartveli, a Georgian engineer who refused to play by anyone's rules, not even America's. But the first impressions were grim. American pilots who had been flying the nimble British Spitfire stared at the P-47 in disbelief. Its cockpit felt like a bathtub bolted to an engine block. Its climb rate was sluggish. It ate runways like a starving animal. It felt, in every way that mattered, completely wrong. And so the nickname stuck. Jug. Originally short for jug of milk. Later reinterpreted as Juggernaut. But that transformation would take time. Its combat debut? A disaster. Radios failed mid-mission, the first sweeps over France were aborted, and after 2 months, the kill-to-loss ratio favored the Germans. The Luftwaffe mocked the flying milk bottle. They made one fatal mistake. They were judging it by their rules. The Thunderbolt was not built to dogfight in the traditional sense. It was built to wage a different kind of war, one fought in the thin, frozen vault above 25,000 feet. At the center of the machine was a mechanical titan, the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, an 18-cylinder radial engine capable of delivering well over 2,000 horsepower and eventually boosted past 2,800 with water injection. German fighters gasped for breath as oxygen thinned. The P-47 inhaled it. Its secret was not just raw horsepower. It was the General Electric turbo supercharger, a labyrinth of ducts and turbines that turned waste exhaust into accelerated air pressure. While German engines suffocated above 25,000 feet, the Jug was just getting warmed up. Up there, it stopped being clumsy. Up there, it owned the sky. If the R2800 was the heart, then the Jug's armament was its iron soul, 8 50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns. 4 in each wing, over 100 rounds per second, with ammunition stores that bordered on the absurd. German fighters often carried seconds, not minutes, of firing time. The Thunderbolt could lay down nearly half a minute of continuous fire. Thunderbolt pilots didn't say they fired guns. They said they cut trees down. Fuselages split open, engines detonated, wings sheared clean through. A Luftwaffe ace later described being on the receiving end as industrial execution. And yet mere firepower wasn't the most terrifying part. It was the fact that the Jug simply refused to die. No coolant lines to sever, no fragile radiators to puncture, just rings of armor, mass, and muscle that could absorb more metal than any fighter in the sky. When Major Robert Johnson limped home in a P-47 riddled with cannon shells, canopy jammed, wings shredded, German fighter emptying its guns into him in disbelief, the Luftwaffe stopped laughing. They began to understand. They were not fighting a plane. They were fighting a fortress. The P-47 failed when forced into the Luftwaffe's game. Low altitude, turning duels where lighter fighters ruled. Then the Americans changed the rules. Commanders of elite groups like the 56th Fighter Group rewrote the book, boom and zoom, climb high, dive fast, strike like a hammer from the heavens, never turn, never linger, never duel. In a dive, the P-47 became a meteor, accelerating past 500 mph, shrugging off compressibility, tearing past German fighters before they could react. The result wasn't combat, it was execution. Soon the bombers of the 8th Air Force flew wrapped in a deadly cocoon of Thunderbolts, and the Luftwaffe's proud Jagdgeschwader found themselves stalked, pounced on, and torn from the sky. By late 1943, German intelligence reports no longer mocked the Thunderbolt. They feared it. And then came 1944. The long-range P-51 Mustang took over deep escort, but the Thunderbolt did not fade. It evolved, shedding altitude for brutality. Below the clouds, it became a new kind of weapon, the Jabo. A fighter bomber with the payload of a light bomber, 2,500 lbs of bombs, rockets, and the same 850s that shredded aircraft now chewing tanks into molten slag. German soldiers heard its radial roar and dove for cover. A new phrase entered their vocabulary, Jabo fever. Jabo fever. It meant pure terror. From D-Day to VE Day, the Thunderbolt shattered Germany's logistics into chalk dust. 86,000 rail cars, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored vehicles, 68,000 trucks. The German high command raged that daylight movement was suicide. Roads became graveyards of shattered steel. The Wehrmacht starved, bled, and suffocated under a storm of American aviation fuel and industrial firepower. The Thunderbolt is ultimately the story of two philosophies colliding: Germany's war of aces versus America's war of industry. The Luftwaffe produced legends, men with 100, 200, 300 kills, but it could not replace them. America produced massive airframes, 15,600 P-47s, massive engines, 125,000 R-2800s, massive pilot corps, nearly 200,000 trained, and most importantly, America produced fuel. Oil, gasoline, spare parts, tires, radios, propellers, ammunition, all in quantities measured not in crates, but in oceans. The Thunderbolt was not simply an airplane, it was a symbol of the moment Germany realized it was not fighting an opponent, it was fighting an economy. By May 1945, the skies above Europe were no longer dueling grounds for aristocrats and ace killers. They were processing lanes, and the Thunderbolt was the machinery that ran them. It ended the war with a 4-1 kill ratio, 500,000 missions flown, thousands of aircraft destroyed, and armies' worth of vehicles and railroads annihilated. The Luftwaffe's greatest tactician, Adolf Galland, once asked what truly defeated his fighter force. He didn't name a battle. He described a sky black with American fighters, where aces could no longer survive long enough to matter. The Thunderbolt, once mocked as a joke, was one of the engines of that darkness, and its legacy survives in the A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog, another ugly, unstoppable monster built to turn steel into fire and terror into doctrine. The story begins in ridicule. It ends in revelation. A reminder for every war, every field, every age. Never laugh at the beast you don't understand, because someday it may be the one burying you.